the CPA, and there we will discuss on women issues. Our struggle is more for more women representation in all the Commonwealth countries, and our voice are being represented by the 9 members of the steering committee of CWP.
It's important because women's issues and things that matter most to women, which paradoxically also matter to men, often get pushed back, pushed behind. Women in the Caribbean, as in much of the world, are not encouraged and not very well supported in making the contributions that we can make and we ought to be making to our societies. We are 50% of the world. It sounds like a cliche now, but we really are, and that should be reflected in the leadership.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats, the session is about to start.
It's very important for us to bring back the information, especially on women issues. When there were all ladies there, the churn out of changing ideas was great.
The other thing that CWP does is it really mainstreams the issues that women face, whether that's issues around violence or marginalisation, or whether that's issues around power. CWP's at the forefront of that across our parliaments in the Pacific.
Post Beijing 1995, where a platform of action was developed, and a number of countries afterwards in the United Nations committed themselves to at least 30% women representation, one has seen progress, I would say, across the board in a number of regions. But there are still challenges that remain.
One of the things we've done in New South Wales is a Stepping Up program, and that's actually now gone national in Australia. So that's about getting young women after their school age to engage with the parliamentary process. So we invite them to our parliaments, we have workshops around presentation skills and things like that.
We brought in 338 young women to sit in our seats. So all males and females had to get out of their seats, sit on the sidelines and watch these women run a parliament. And I think that engagement, that empowered a lot of young women to say, I can do it.
Anybody with the will, the ability, the wherewithal, you know, it's about passion, it's about wanting to do what you want to do. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it, and certainly that you can't do it because you're a woman.
Dare to dream big, never give up, and strive for only the best. There is no limit what we as women can accomplish. We, all the women in the world, need to take charges of our own fate. Best wishes to you all. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, a bag of goodies from CPA. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you've had a good networking break, because this panel is here to engage, inform, stimulate, provoke. And can I start by thanking both the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the Commonwealth Local Government Forum for being the sponsors of this forum. So in a way, I feel like the conversation's carrying on a little bit from what some of us were involved in this morning. Our topic is women's political participation at all levels. Just a preliminary remark, you may have seen that you had these on your seats. Now, what are these? Well, firstly, it's a yellow card. Secondly, as the afternoon goes on, you are invited to write on the yellow card what you personally will pledge to do to empower women and girls to be leaders. And you are invited to take your idea on the yellow card, go to level 3, well, we're on level 3, the Westminster room, which I think is the library room, and you are to pin your pledge on the wall. I assume CPA or CLGF will then collect the pledges, and they will do some compilation of what people have undertaken to do. So that's the yellow card, and I may remind you again at the end. It's not a yellow card for bad behaviour, by the way. It's a yellow card for good ideas. Right. So we have our guests on the panel, and let me first of all invite our keynote speaker. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our mayor, Sunkarie Kabba-Kamara, the mayor of Kakeni in Sierra Leone. I'm told, Madam Mayor, that you are currently the only female mayor among the 6 city council municipalities. Is this correct? Are you a lonely woman? The only one.
We now have a second mayor.
You got a second one,
yeah.
Good. So you won in a landslide in a primary election held on September 2nd, 2012. You know a lot about the challenges of women rising to such positions, but you also have a lot of positive things to say about the strides that women are making. So we're going to invite the Mayor of Kakeni to be our keynote speaker from the podium. Please give her a big welcome. 8 minutes.
Thank you very much, Helen. I bring you greetings from Kakeni in Sierra Leone. I'm very delighted to be part of the Women's Forum, to be working with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association on this session. When I first saw the program, that I will be delivering a keynote address on my experience, and I'll be having a co-keynote speaker, I said to myself, wow, this is a tale of 2 women. One from Britain, a very advanced democracy, and one from Sierra Leone, democracy that is crippling. So I'm very happy, like I said, to be here. You've heard from the facilitator that I am Mayor Sunkarie Kamara of Kakeni Municipality in northern Sierra Leone. I've just been elected for the 2nd time in the just concluded March 7th election. I am the first democratically elected female mayor in the Republic of Sierra Leone and the first ever in the northern province of Sierra Leone. I will start with my story so far. It has been a very long journey, long and bumpy. I hail from a predominantly patriarchal and traditional society where customary law precludes women from holding chieftaincy positions. One will wonder how I got to this position. My inspiration and motivation was drawn from the numerous cries of women folks in my community who believe the restoration of democracy will bring the much needed results for them if women's needs were specifically articulated and projects designed within community development plans to cater for their needs and aspirations. More importantly, I saw the education of the girl child as a stepping stone for breaking the glass ceiling and addressing the challenges of women and girls, especially in the political spheres, where men are mostly the gatekeepers. I decided to answer to this call, denied myself to make a difference. Today, I can proudly state that I have a number of community initiatives transforming women, youth, children, and men in my local council. I will quickly run you through few achievements. The local economic development is one project that I introduced in my municipality where I support women doing tie and dye. For those of you who are not familiar about tie and dye, the outfit I'm wearing is tie and dye. I helped the women to add some value because initially they were using very low quality fabric. But with my intervention, I was able to support them, over 300 of them, and today they can produce high quality garata and dye fabric, which, they can sell all over the world. Also, I provided teaching learning materials for especially the girl child education. That's a very big challenge. Most girls drop out of school because they lack teaching learning materials. And school mentorship program for girls. I always avail myself. Schools, take their turns to come to my office so that I address especially the girls, to encourage them. And most of the schools today in my municipality, can proudly boast of my mentorship that I do for girls. I also advocate to get drugs, both nationally and internationally, into our regional referral hospital. Today, women have confidence to go to the hospital to give birth, because before this time, they will tell you there are no drugs. So I will not go there. They prefer they go to traditional birth attendants. So that has made a very big difference. Now they can go to hospital for safe delivery. And of course, my waste management project. For those of you that know Sierra Leone, I think my city is referred to as the cleanest city in the whole of Sierra Leone today, not even compared to the capital city of Freetown, because there is an improved waste management plan and project that I have put in place to address the issue of sanitation. But amidst all of those achievements, I have challenges. And the first challenge is the local government financing. This is very, very critical because you will not undertake all of these projects if you don't have the requisite funds to do that. Of course, continued poverty amongst folk, sustaining women's mobilization is very critical for me. Big lack of money, has made women coming forward to vie for political positions very difficult because they don't have the funds to support their campaigns. With me, I went through a similar experience for almost 2 terms now. So the funds are very critical in moving on campaigns. So you have so many women shying away from these political positions because they will tell you, I don't have the money, to go to run for that office. So my political participation, how can we improve the political participation? Drawing strongly on my experience. Breaking the hurdles within political party practice. I mean, we need to have women in those political party positions because they are, like I said initially, the gatekeepers we have are men. They are in charge, you know, of the political party leadership. So we want to see more women, and we want to see, for those areas where we cannot get women, we want to see a revitalization of the women's wings, because that was what they relegated us to. That's we form part of the wings of these political parties. But if they are active, we know it will be good for our women. Providing a replica of the Old Boys Network. Since this morning, I've been hearing of the Old Boys Network. In Sierra Leone, we have alumni associations, you know, but these associations are very good in supporting men. Even my newly elected president, his inauguration has been tied to the annual celebration of his alma mater. That is how the men operate. But for us women, no. So I think that is one strategic way we should support our women. You know, we should create similar structures. And then identify, support credible and capable women leadership. Women negotiating their own space. Competent women can mentor others, like I'm doing. You know, I move around mentoring others, like for our past elections, so that we negotiate those spaces. We also use dialogues and negotiations to address the limited space of women in traditional governance. This is very key because it's like a lower level thing. And that's where we should start as grassroots women. We begin to get women into those positions at local level. We have to negotiate those spaces. Like we have positions for court chairmen. You know, we negotiated and then we have few women into those positions. My advice to women who aspire, one of the biggest challenges women in leadership are currently facing is equality in the workplace. Wow. I think my time is up. Okay, let me just take you to the last point. In Sierra Leone, of course, we have a slogan that more women, better politics. I think we've been saying that since this morning. Better politics, more women. If we have more women into political position, then the world will be fit for everybody, for women, for children, for men. I'm also very happy, I must say, with the CLGF that they have launched the network of Commonwealth women in local governments. This is actually going to inspire us the more at local government level to see how we can support other women to come up, you know, to fill those political positions. This is a wonderful opportunity to share our experience, my experience, sorry, and to think about what will help us to keep the focus on encouraging more women into leadership position. I would like us to call for the Commonwealth to set up a task force of political leaders to be accountable, you know, to monitor the governments that will be signed up to this, so that at the end of the day, we'll be able to achieve the SDG 5. So on that note, I want to thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you so much. And, you know, I was very interested when the Mayor made the point about improved sanitation being a priority, because one of the things learned, I understand, from a study in India, where at the most basic level of local government, there is a quota for women of 30%, was when the women started to come into these councils in a critical mass, they were prioritising issues like the water and the sanitation, which hadn't been so important often to the men. So it was a very practical example that you gave of the difference that can be made from a woman's perspective. And thank you also for mentioning the Commonwealth Local Government Forum's Women's Network, which was launched at the Malta conference of the Commonwealth Local Government Forum. And we have great hopes for it. And I understand from Lucy Slack, the Deputy Secretary-General of CLGF, who's here, that Uganda is going to pilot this. And the idea will be to try to roll out the women's networks through the local government associations. So if you're here from a local government association in the Commonwealth or have influence with it, be knocking on Lucy's door for support. And secondly, I understand that CPA is looking at a new initiative for a women's alumni network, because there are many women with such valuable experiences as parliamentarians in the Commonwealth whose experiences and knowledge should be tapped. So fully on board with your idea of champions for gender equality sitting at that CHOGM. You know, there are some good champions there who walk the talk on gender. Let's see them, you know, really raise their voices in the Commonwealth so we can get more action and see more than the usual 1, 2, 3 or 4 women leaders sitting at a CHOGM table. Right. Now, you may have thought we were tough on the mayor who got 8 minutes, but I have to be really horrible to the panellists. They've been told they've got 2 minutes. Because the session is also about engagement. We have people who've texted their questions, and there are many here who are burning to speak in the morning and didn't get a chance. So we're going to, you know, try and give everybody a go. So on the 2 minutes, the general guidance that's been given to the panellists is pick what you want to say about what's the most important thing that could be done to get more women into decision-making positions. Or you might want to say what strategies work for you to get to where you are now, why you thought you were able to succeed in that, and key challenges. So just pick and choose from any of those for your 2 minutes. And if you see this card, you're in deep trouble, deep trouble. So I'm going to give it back to my timekeeper, who's very fierce, because she'll tell me off if I don't keep the time. So I think I'll come along the row, and I want to start with the Honourable Angela Thoko Didiza, CWP Chair of Africa Region. You're on.
Well, thank you very much, Moderator. My name is Thoko Didiza, Member of Parliament from South Africa and House Chairperson for Internal Arrangements in the National Assembly. I'm also the Chair of the CWP Africa Region. Well, one interesting thing that when I was asked to speak, I thought, how does one explain one's journey in 2 minutes and say what needs to work? Being the first Secretary General of the Women's National Coalition that produced the Charter for Effective Equality in 1992, I was very young at that time, because in 94 I was 29 when I was made the first Deputy Minister for Agriculture. Highly dominated sector by men, and I had to actually convince not only the women folk, but South Africans in general, that women matter in the agricultural sector. But what is it that made me succeed? One, it was the strength of the women's movement, relying and working with women, knowing that we are there not only for ourselves as leaders, but we're there to represent the constituency, because if we represent women, women actually carry the aspirations of all in society. Secondly, it was about having confidence on the subject matter that I was responsible for. So I had to quickly learn, what is this agriculture? But more than that, was how do you bring issues on the agenda? Because the majority of people only care about agriculture when there's famine or when there's flood or drought. But otherwise, really, it's not an issue. Other issues are more important. So I had to actually coin one of the important slogans together with the Minister of Mines, that if it's not farmed, it's mined. And I think that was the relevance to say and show the linkages between agriculture and other sectors of economy. That agriculture was not just about food security, it was about the economy as a whole, it was also about sciences, it was also about eliminating poverty.
Fantastic. All in 2 minutes.
Thank you.
And as we know, women in Africa do so much of the work in agriculture, right?
Certainly.
But there's also a lot of inequalities. They tend to have the less productive land, fewer inputs, less access to credit, and so on. So a lot of equity issues. Great that there was a woman minister to talk about some of those things too. Now, next to the Honourable Angela is Councillor Buumba Malambo, Magoba ward from Kafue district, Zambia. Yes, welcome.
Thank you so much. I can see the 2 minutes is almost like 2 seconds. So I come from a background of a charity. I was running a charity from the time I was 15 years. And then when I went to university, I was sent to the village to do something that has to do with social work students learning how to work with the community. And in that community, a foreign place, I was there for 3 months. And when it was time for elections, the people said, this is the one. And I was voted in, and I was just 23 going into 24. It was so difficult for me because we're talking about age. People look at age, and they were looking at, so I had to do a lot of big head wraps and just to look older. And you know, so we're talking about age. It was a big issue for me. She's young. There's nothing she can do for us. She's female. I was insulted. She's a prostitute. She's a witch. Everything that goes with being female. And because I had already conditioned myself and I had mentors and I was confident that I had education, I was from the university, and I could understand the kind of people I was going to work with. I was confident that I would speak their language, and that's what education does, and that's what we're advocating for. Young women to have education. If they don't have education, they cannot sit on platforms like this. And if they don't have mentors, I had mentors. I have pictures of all the female ministers in my country, and I have them in my bedroom. Those are my mentors. If you don't have the, young females like me don't have such mentors, we cannot sit on platforms like these. And so, also, you know, the mentors, they teach you how to deal with propaganda. It was chaos for me. It was a lot of propaganda. I was lucky I didn't have a lot of dirty stuff in my private life, but it can be very, very, very difficult for women because they bring in your family, they bring in every little thing that you do as a woman. So if you don't have mentors to condition you to be strong when you stand on those podiums, I wouldn't have made it. And also, now that I've won, and one of the, you know, just the 2 female councillors in the council, it's absolutely difficult because every point you make, she's just female. What are you talking about? Sanitary wear? We don't do sanitary wear or those things. So it's preparing women and also understanding that I understand that I'm looked at with bigger lenses. My male councillors, nobody talks about them. But if you go on Facebook, go on WhatsApp, Buumba every day. So it's also exposure. I have exposure. I'm lucky, really. The networks, you know, connecting women young women to have networks through education. Commonwealth is always sponsoring me, and I'm shining. I was in Malta, local government. I'm everywhere shining because I have an education, I have networks, and Commonwealth is picking me by merit. And that's what we're saying. Let's teach our young women to go out there and get things by merit. Nobody's going to come in your house and tell you to go and be a councillor. You have to be willing and put yourself forward. And that's the message that I put across in my charity with the little kids that we are sponsoring. We started with 1, and now we have 678, of which 90%, of which 90%, honestly, I'm biased, 90% are girls. And I'm doing this for them. I'm doing this for them because without education, they will not have the emancipation that you need as a young female to see beyond. And also, the last point is that when I was campaigning, I had cartels, male cartels. Every morning, they would throw stones. Hey, prostitutes come out, and these are male cartels. And something really surprising was also women had cartels against me. And that's what we're saying. Women, men support each other. Can we support each other? If we can, I see how the male councillors relate, and they're getting big chunks of land, and they're talking, they're having beer, and women don't do that. It's so difficult. And, you know, I've been lucky because I can talk to the female ministers because I forced myself on their doors. But you can imagine a young councillor, a young female in the rural area, where is she going to get the guts to stand as a councillor without education, without anything? It's male dominated, and your age, they'll look at all those things. So this is my advocacy, and this is what I stand for, that young females should be given. Actually, we are the most untapped reservoir of talent in the world. And so when we are talking about women sitting on the table, it should actually also be young women sitting on the table and not in the audience. Thank you.
I think you might have recruited a few campaign staff. Thank you so much. Now, next along, Councillor Bev Esslinger, Chair of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Standing Committee on International Relations and member of the Standing Committee on Increasing Women's Participation in Municipal Government. Councillor.
I'd like her 2 minutes. I'm just really honored to be here, and I am a councillor in the city of Edmonton, which is the most northern major city in Canada. We have about 1 million people. Last term, I'm a second-term council. Last term, I was the only woman on council. And I have to say, that was the question I got asked all the time. How does it feel to be the only woman on city council? I said, if I had a dollar every time someone asked me that, I'd fund my campaign and every other woman who wanted to run. Everybody wanted to know how it felt. And instead of talking about my feelings, I wanted to talk about the issues and what we could do. And it was my opportunity to put forward a number of issues, because really, which man was going to vote against women's issues when I'm the only woman? It didn't look good on them politically. So we were able to get childcare policies and gender-based analysis policies. We did a number of initiatives on changing our hours for family-friendly meetings, adding parental leave. But as we started to get near the next election, what we discovered is many women were interested in running. And we had used mentorship programs through FCM, working with young women, but they're very limited. So we went to a new program called Opening the Potential. We said any woman who wants to learn how to run a campaign, wants to understand what the job is, come out. 55 women committed to a 9-month course. It meant that the next time we had an election, we went from having 12% of the women candidates running to 30% of the candidates. We went from having a fairly white background to really diverse women running for office. Now, it meant that after the election, we only had a second woman councillor, but we have many women ready to run again. They know how to run. We've demystified it. We made it simple. Anyone can do it. That's why the men have been doing it for a long time. They can do it because they do it for the right reasons. And women, they do it because they want to build their community. They do it because they want to have a voice. What better role model for us to provide to our children and our grandchildren than being a role model and to see them doing what you're doing. I had the saddest picture drawn for me by a little girl. She drew a picture of 12 men and one lady. And she says, I want to help that lady. And so I said, yes, and you can. If we can just get that message out to our young women, you can do it, and I will help you. My responsibility is to help anyone who asks. And I met with so many women interested, because if we don't invest in the next generation, who will? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And last on our panel, last but not least, is the Honourable Maria Browne, MP. who is Minister of Housing, Lands and Urban Renewal in Antigua and Barbuda. And I think many of you will be aware that this is not only an important portfolio any week of the year, but in one of the most devastating cyclones of the last year or so, Barbuda was almost totally destroyed with its infrastructure, about 95% destruction. So we know you have very, very important work on your plate to try to help people get back to live and work in Barbuda. So please.
Indeed. Thank you for having me. Well, I was elected to office on the 21st of March of this year, and I must say that it has been, the campaign itself has been one of the most challenging feats for me in my entire 27 years. The challenge that I faced mostly was the factor of age. Just like my colleague panelist here said, being 26 years old and running for office, there were individuals saying, you know, she's too young, there was a lot of pushback. But what worked for me was that I stayed focused. I stayed focused and I had a very good support base. The support base came from women in my party, in my political party, and outside of the political party as well, in my constituency. It was a bit overwhelming at first, but the reception that I received really helped for me to stay focused and push forward to the task at hand. What I think needs to be done to involve women in politics more is to start from the younger ones. If we can target our younger girls, have more workshops for them, have stronger support systems for them, let them know their worth and let them know that they are capable of becoming leaders in our societies, then I think that will have an exceptional reach in time to come. In Antigua and Barbuda, I now sit with another minister of government in the cabinet, and sadly, it's only 2 of us out of 16. However, what has made it very interesting is that our party has pushed open the gates and encouraged more women to be engaged in politics in Antigua and Barbuda, and giving them seats at higher realms. Our Senate now boasts majority women, and that we're very, very fond of. In addition to that, our diplomatic corps heads a lot of women as well. Our very own British High Commissioner, Ms. Karen May Hill, she holds that position as well, as long as many other diplomatic positions. And for that, we're very fond. However, we do have to push forward, and we hope that our numbers are up in the next election.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Sorry, my 2 minutes was rather short indeed.
Well, a great panel, and someone I'll just flag who's sitting on the end and is going to do a summary for us at the end is Professor Sarah Child. So welcome to you too, Sarah. Thank you. Now, we've had questions coming in on social media, and I'm going to come to 1 or 2 of those in a minute. But there are a couple of guests here I would particularly like to contribute. Is the Honourable Emilia Lifaka from Cameroon with us now? Right in the front row. Right. Now, the Honourable Lifaka is the chair of CPA's Executive Committee, so chair of Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, EXCOM, and is the International Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly of Cameroon. So I'm going to invite you to be our first participant. Please.
Thank you very much. I want to stand for. Thank you, dear ladies, for sharing your experience with us, because in politics, I've been in Parliament for 16 years, Deputy Speaker for 9, and just recently elected as chair of CPA. I know what it is and what we go through as women to get to where we are. I want to ask particularly the young women, because like I said, I know what it is. I got into Parliament a little bit older, much older than you people, and I know what it is to raise children and be a politician. The flip side of all this is, because during my tenure, my 3-year tenure, what I want to do is, what I pledged to do is try to make sure that within the CPA, by the time I got in, we had 50 women. By the time I finish, we should have 300 women in Parliament. That is my wish. Yes. However, we have to look at the flip side. As a child-bearing woman, how do you want to be? A good mother, a good wife, a good politician, a good caregiver, because you know, as women, we are caregivers. I mean, I don't know about other places, but in Africa, if your mother is sick, you have an obligation to go and take care of her. Not only your mother, your aunt, your cousin, your uncle. If your husband is sick, he becomes the first baby in your house. When the children are sick, you are there. You are the first nurse. You are the first pastor. You are the first doctor in your family. How do we manage all of this and still try to be good politicians? And still try to move on that ladder to get to these political places? Because most of us do not own political parties. It's the men. And they organize their meetings in very unfriendly and very ungodly hours, so that we should not attend. Or you have an excuse for not coming because you don't want to leave your family, you don't want to leave your children, you have other things to do. That is one of the reasons, that is one of the things they use to keep us out to get into these positions. Now, panelists, we are learning, because those are some of the questions even our grandmothers ask us, our own mothers ask us, that you people are doing all of this. You no longer have time to train children. You have abandoned the children to your nannies. Your nannies are the ones who cook for your husbands. They are the ones that give food to your children. Our own parents accuse us of all of those things. Now, how do we cope with that? How do we become that superwoman who can be a good mother, a good wife, a good politician, a good caregiver, the first doctor of her children, the first pastor, and of course, the first babysitter of her husband when he is sick? Because normally when they are sick, they become the first babies in your house. Thank you very much.
Not just in Africa.
Anyone like to respond to that? I mean, the work-life balance issue is significant for all of us, but please, Honourable Angela.
Well, I'm young, maybe not so young than other colleagues who are on the stage, but it's a very interesting question, Amelia, that you ask. I'm a mother of 5. I did my junior degree as well as my honors and masters studying together with my kids. I would say for me the first part is demystifying politics. That, you know, politics is like any other career. Being a public representative is like any other responsibility or job that one has, and therefore it can't be looked at differently. But how do you cope? Whether you're a nurse, you're a teacher, a politician, you need a support system, which could be your extended family, could be your friends, who will understand the nature of your work. As your children grow up, they need to have an appreciation of the kind of work that you do. I used to go with my kids in political meetings, so they understood what's the nature of work. Sometimes they'll tease me and say, "Order, Comrade Chair," you know, even at home, so we'll debate matters. But they understood what that responsibility of being a public representative is about, not only for society, but also about how to change their own lives. So they became my #1 fans. And therefore, we were able to negotiate the spaces so that they understood what I needed to do. At the same time, I also needed to give them support where that support was necessary. And for me, I think that's one of the factors that we need to negotiate. When my husband proposed, the children asked later, did he kneel down? I said, no, we actually had to discuss. Because I had to ask him, good, you want a wife, but are you going to deal with a wife that's like me, maybe not in your own stereotype of a wife? Fortunately, he was an activist, but that doesn't mean it was easier for him to cope. He had to understand that it is a joint responsibility to raise the family. It's a joint responsibility to take care of the extended family. But also, it was his responsibility to struggle side by side with me for the liberation of our society and for its transformation. And one of the things that we had to grapple with, and using my religious background, one of the things that I had to do is to draw on the scriptures about the role of women in leadership and how those women during that time liberated their own societies. The story of Esther is never told in a manner that it shows the courage, the bravery, and the leadership of that woman in the Bible for the liberation of her kind. The story of Ruth and Naomi equally decided to break the odds of how we get defined as wives and mothers-in-law. She said, I will stand by you. Even if it means I leave my people to go and be with your people, I will do so. For me, that's the story of solidarity. And that's the story of solidarity that has carried the women's movement the world over. And I think if you look at today, what we talk about women's representation in parliament, it's about that solidarity of pulling each other up, not because of the numbers that we want to displace men, but it's because we are part of this society. Society is not single-handed. It's not defined by one gender, but it's for both men and women. But what matters is when we are in those spaces, what do we do to change those institutions, those laws for the better so that we can improve the lot of women, but also the lot of society? And I would say part of the issues which have been raised from this morning, when we talk about parental leave, it's about addressing those issues of support system so that it's not just maternity leave, but men can actually take leave to go and look after a sick child. When we talk about having childcare facilities in our workplaces, including parliaments, it's about that support system so that as a woman, you can have certainty that my child is looked after in a secure institution so that I can serve society better. So it is possible. It can be done. It's also about changing our consciousness. What is the role of women in society? So that we can change those stereotypes. Part of popular education, and also as we grow up, to draw some of the lessons. I always say it's very interesting if we go back, all of us, in our various traditions. I'm a Zulu. Well, I always say I'm half Zulu, half Swazi. So I'm Southern African, Africa International in me, one. But one of the interesting things, if you look at Shaga's aunt, Shaga the warrior who's spoken about, she actually was a regiment. She was able to direct what must happen in society, not just as an advisor. At times she led on things that needed to be done. You can draw so many in our various traditions, the role of the matriarchs and how they actually propelled their societies forward. It is those histories and those narratives that we need to bring in the discourse so that this issue about women's participation in public life is demystified.
Thank you.
You want to say a word on that too, yes?
Yes, that we should also think of the radical approach. You know, you've said it all, you know, with all the biblical examples and traditional things. But in this case, especially for women in politics, we need to change the gatekeepers. Because if I am chairman of my political party, I will know when to call meetings.
Yeah.
I will know when to call meetings. It's because it is not affecting them as men. That's why they keep, you know, holding meetings at ungodly times. When they know, you know, after your meetings, when you come back, your husband will frown at you. That's why they're calling meetings to reduce our lot Nothing, after your meetings, when you come back, your husband will frown at you. That's why they are calling meetings to reduce our lot, not to participate in politics. So for me, I also believe it should be another prong, of approach to make sure we get women into those positions. I have said it, I'm going to vie, we're going to have a mini convention, I'm going to vie for district chairmanship for my political party. So I will encourage more women to come on board and make the team more woman-friendly.
Fantastic. I'm going to bring other panelists in on other questions, but I have another signalled contribution from a board member of Commonwealth Local Government Forum, who's president of the Ugandan Local Government Association. Is George Mutabasi here? George, the floor is yours. We like to have a man contributing occasionally. Thank you.
Thank you. A quick one. I'm the president of Uganda Local Government Association, and I'm happy to be here. I'm a board member of CLGF. The association that I lead it has 121 district local governments, and each district local government has a women representative in parliament. It also has a councillor per sub-county. We've got 1,400 sub-counties, and each of that sub-county has a women representative. My government has endeavored to bring women on board. However, I also happen to be a district local government chairperson in my own capacity. And in my district called Ruwengo, I started what is called Ruwengo District Women Union. And this women union has got 800 women leaders. And we created women groups of village saving groups. And we created some small circles, saving groups. And these are not particularly women, but we included everyone. Where we put men as treasurers, they ate the money. Where we put ladies as treasurers, we still have the money. It's a nightmare. You may not actually know how much the community down there on lower local levels, the community is getting rotten because there is no father figure in these homes. And these children end up on the streets, they end up being violent, and nobody wants to notice that. But I want to just take you through one simple example. Uganda is going to be having 20 billion US dollars in the next 5 years. And this is going to be coming into the oil and gas sector because we've just discovered oil and gas. And there is going to be the largest oil and gas pipeline that is going to be cutting through from western part of Uganda to Tanzania, the largest and longest heated, electrically heated oil and gas pipeline. Now, there's got to be some compensation on the land where the oil and gas pipeline is going to pass. There is a very big problem that when these people are going to be compensated, they are going to be compensating people with land titles, for example. And in Uganda, it is very difficult to find a woman owning land in a family. It's the land title is owned by a man. And these men are going to get this money and drink it. It's a very unfortunate story. I don't know whether my speaker was here, my speaker of parliament was here. I don't know whether she's still here.
She's another session.
Yes, she's in another session. But the struggle that we are fighting, for example, we are going to have 50,000 people who are going to be working in the oil and gas sector. And the government has put up a local content law which states that nothing should be imported from outside the country. But our people are not empowered enough to make sure they can be able to supply. So what I have done in the 800 women groups, I have empowered 30 women per village. Give them water because we can drill using our hands and get water. Got a company from Germany, given them some chicks so that they can be able to supply eggs in the oil and gas sector. Once a while, you need money to do that. Now, I just want to conclude by saying, ladies who are in this room, Commonwealth Secretariat and the Forum, you have got allies. Some of us are ready to support. Some of us are your allies. You need change agents. Not to come and change women, because women are already fighting. They are already putting this. But we need to change the men. Some of our men, some of our people are not really positive. They don't even want to learn. And you know, when the young lady was talking, the councillor, I'm like, can I jump into her council and try to talk sense to these councillors? Because really we need to come out on board. We need to make sure we come and support you wherever you are. I am happy to volunteer, go any part of the world to make sure this happens. Thank you.
Well, so we've appointed you men's change champion. Thank you. Right, I'm going to use one of the social media questions now, and I think given Buumba's testimony earlier, I'll direct it to you, Buumba. This is from Dan Peacock of Nottingham in the United Kingdom, and he says, to what extent is sexual harassment an issue? And he said within your parliaments, but we'll say within councils as well. And if so, does such a culture constitute a significant barrier and or deterrence to women's political participation? The floor is yours.
Okay, so this is how I'll answer it. Sexual harassment in terms of emotional and physical. So in terms of emotional, sexual harassment, I'll talk in terms of my experience. Firstly, I had people telling my boyfriend, you can't date this girl because she's too strong and she's gonna be in politics and she's too ambitious. So things didn't work out and he left and such things. So sexual harassment can be in terms of emotional, how people perceive women that are going for how people perceive women that are going into politics, and that connotation that she's going to be sleeping with a lot of men now that she's in politics. And that's exactly what I go through even now with my current boyfriend, or whatever I can call him, It's a huge challenge for him, because at least he's in politics. He understands that when I sit on those podiums and talk about my issues, I'm not going to sleep with the mayor, or I'm not going to sleep with anyone in the district. I'm just there because this is a career, just like any other thing. And I can go home and cook and do all those other things just like a normal woman. But this is not how it's perceived, even among women. They still encourage that kind of sexual harassment. I feel like it's the worst maybe form than physical, because it has really disturbed a certain part of my life, because you even find my mom asking you questions like, when are you going to maybe get married? Or when are you going maybe to, you're too all over up there, So it's an emotional thing for women that are in politics in terms of sexual orientation or where you stand as a woman. Then physically, when I was campaigning, when I was standing, I had plenty of men asking to sleep with me so that I could get the adoption, so that I could get the certificate for the adoption process, or get the certificate for the councillorship. And I couldn't believe it, because nobody was asking the men to sleep with them. I just couldn't believe it. And this is something that is very important for our young women, to understand that actually you can get something without even sleeping with anybody. And if we can put that across the minds of young women, a lot of them will go into politics. And for me, it was just like, the moment I see such kind of a message, I would take it to maybe the district chair lady and speak to her, and it will be all over, and those people will never say that again. And that's how I got my adoption, clean and clear. And you can imagine a young woman in a village wants to stand. She's going to sleep with all the headmen. She's going to sleep with all these men so that she can get this adoption. And this is happening. It's happening. I've seen it. I've had messages, and it's crazy. And that's why a lot of women are not going into politics, because of that negative connotation that when Buumba is into politics, she's going to sleep with all the politicians that are there so that she can get the adoption. And if Buumba is in politics, she can't be a good woman, she can't be a good mother or a wife, because she's going to be in that dirty game where only men, for women to go into there, they have to sleep with someone.
It's good that you're breaking down that stereotype. I've got a question from Tammy Randall from Gibraltar, and I'm going to direct it to the Honourable Maria, because Maria mentioned the need to start young with encouraging women to think about, taking on these positions. So Tammy has asked, she says, in Gibraltar there are only 2 female legislators. What kinds of mechanisms and programs could be implemented in schools for girls aged 12 to 18 in order to create greater female engagement in politics? Ideas, Maria?
I think, first of all, we should start in vacation camps. Let's say a summer camp, put simply, aimed at girls and aimed at their development in their leadership roles for later on in life. I think introducing it into the classroom as well among boys and girls, so that the boys can appreciate at a young age that girls are capable of excelling. I think, just as the gentleman over there had stated earlier, it's important to have our men involved as well. So I don't think that we should just exclude it, exclusively focus on our girls at that young age, but have the boys involved in it as well. Although there are some areas that we'd want to have for our girls in terms of the leadership skills, in terms of supporting each other, the importance of strong pair relations. I think these are excellent things that can be done through camps, through classroom lessons, through interactive games, inter-schools, probably debates on women's topics, girls' topics, things affecting our young girls, have it inter-schools. And I think these are all areas that we can stem from and start, and look forward to great things happening.
Fantastic. Right. I'm going to look out in the audience. Who's got their hand up? Who's got their hand up? There's so many hands up. I'm going to go to you in the middle. Thank you.
I can use my big voice, I think.
And I'm probably going to pick on Councillor Bev to answer it, so there we go.
I'm Laura Ross. I'm from Saskatchewan in Canada. I'm the
next door.
My kids live in Edmonton. Anyways, I'm the chair of CWP Canada region. One of the things we talked about is the girls, and we have guides, girl guides across the world. And I spend a lot of time talking to all the different groups, age groups in guides about women in leadership, girls in leadership, because it's a perfect venue for us to tap into. So I just wanted to share that with you when you said, day camps, but really, in fact, it's already made there. We don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. There's ways for us to engage with girls already, and so that's what I'm going to, because that's what I've been doing, and I'm going to encourage everyone else here to look at using that kind of venue.
Councillor Bev, any thoughts you'd like to offer on getting the young generation of women stepping up?
Well, I think we need to take every opportunity we have. We all have different opportunities. You have girl guides, you might have summer camps. I think any kind of program that we are able to have the conversation. I personally go into a lot of schools and talk to classes, and I think the other thing that we need to do is take on some mentorship. One of the things that we're looking at is getting credit for high school students to come and be mentees in City Hall. We have a City Hall school right now for grades 1 through 6 that come for a week and they learn all about City Hall, which is one way to educate them, but I like to get them in their older years where they're able to make those decisions and engage them. But mentorship is one of the greatest tools we have to be able to engage them. They could see what the job really is and always say, see, you can do it. And I think the other thing is we can engage young people when we have campaigns. They're more tech savvy than I'm ever going to be. So they can take care of many of the roles that you have. Engage them in campaigns, and pretty soon they care about what's happening politically, and then we need to encourage them. The thing that I like to, that comes to mind is one of the pieces of research says that we need to ask women up to 5 times before they consider running for office. So we need to ask young women, have you thought about it? You should think about it. Plant the seed and then water it over time. And if it's going to take 5 times, I'm going to give you one. I want everyone to run for office in here that's not running yet.
Very good. Right, down the side there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this question is about Caribbean governance, but I would like to have a little response from the Honorable Malambo, as well as Antigua and Bermuda. Welcome from the Caribbean. So in the Caribbean, there's, well, particularly in Trinidad and Tobago, I find there's a lot of corruption in governance, and especially with regards to like party politics. And most times, many young people like myself who belong to like disenfranchised communities kind of shy away from politics because you don't want to be involved in that kind of level of corruption. However, like over the past 40, 50 years, independent candidates hasn't won any elections. Like how, if you were supposed to consider running for government, but you don't want to be associated with a party, but you want to run as an independent candidate to represent your particular constituency. Like how would you advise that I do that? As well as with regards to other, and regards to dealing with the pushback, like I'm an open LGBT person in my community, like, so how would you advise doing that? Thank you.
Who'd like to have a shot at that one?
As independent candidate, I think if you're going to run as an independent candidate, I'm in the opposition. So in the opposition party, that's where I stood and that's where I won the elections from. But if you're going to maybe win as an independent, what helped me was I wasn't a politician, I wasn't affiliated, I didn't know the political parties, I just had to choose that, let me go with this political party because it had a very large sector of education, so I really wanted that component of education, so I went for that one. And what helped me was I was already working with the community. So if you're going to stand as an independent, you need to show your self-worth. The people have to love you, and they have to love your gift of service to them. For me, it was almost every household had a child that was being sponsored by my charity. So it was like, this one is going to vote, this one is going to vote, because all their children are wearing my uniform or they are wearing the shoes. And then I advanced to women groups. Actually, if you, I didn't even tell you that we have a women's literacy club. So our oldest student is 78. She just learned how to write for the first time. And I'm excited. I mean, yeah, she might die soon, but she has learned how to write her name, and that's something that's encouraging. And when I see the older women coming out of the night school lessons with their uniforms and their stockings, and I watch the little girls, how they look at the women, and they're inspired to have an education. So it's the impact that you put in your community that will make the people vote for you and trust you with their vote, and trust you with their principles and what they would want you to do for them as a person who wants to run for office. So if you want to stand as an independent and your country has never had an independent candidate, you could be the first one. We are breaking barriers. You could be the first independent candidate in your country, and then everybody will say, she's the first, she's the first, and she's the first. So it's love for your community, and show them that you can work before you actually even tell them that I want to run for office. I had to prove myself through the charity that I was running. And when I said I want to be your councillor, they said, oh, well, she's still going to represent us. And it was so easy. And people voted in large numbers compared to all these years they were voting from 1964. So it's how you handle your community and how you understand them. And I'll tell you the other secret is women. Women can make you win because women are the voters. I knew that most of the men are fishermen and they'll go fishing on the day of election. They'll go in the bush on the day of elections. Take hold of the women. Women can always make you win because when they believe in your cause, you take care of their children, you take care of their principles and what they want. I think I'll win again because I'm doing a labor ward for the women.
Right. Now, we're under strict time. I've been told no more questions. I'm going to take that as Buumba's final statement. But I'm going to ask each of the others just for a 1-minute reflection on any last point you'd like to make before I invite Professor Sarah Childs to sum up. So, Madam Mayor, a last thought you'd like to leave with our audience.
Well, I'll just encourage all that we build very strong alliances as women to serve as building blocks for our political aspirations. I know many times, well, with all due respect to the men, some will try to put you down. You know, they say you don't belong to the table. You don't have a voice. But if we build a very strong network of women, they will be the support. They will be the pillar. They will give us all what it takes for us to achieve our dreams. So let us don't forget, especially those of us as women that are living in areas that are isolated, through these support networks, we'll be able to get there. Thank you.
Honourable Angela.
Thank you very much, Helen. I would say one of the important things that I would like to leave with the audience, particularly those of you who are in the legal fraternity, but also those of you who are in parliaments or in local government, and in the women's movement generally. It's about reviewing our legal frameworks, looking at what are the weaknesses that we need to tighten up, particularly your electoral laws. How are they facilitating for women? Secondly, it's about changing parties' constitutions or statutes. In my country, for instance, the ruling party, the ANC, in 2007 in its Congress, took a decision for 50-50 representation in all decision-making structures, be it in the legislatures or anywhere else. And one of the things we had to do to practicalize that is to ensure that women are not in the lower spaces where they cannot have an access. So we use a zebra system that even if there might be a man who has got more votes, but you'll put a woman, so it was women, men, and that assures us to have that 50-50% representation. But thirdly, issue of media and publicity. You know, one of the weaknesses, and I'm happy the SG is here, of CPA, because as women parliamentarians, we talk about increasing women representation, but how many in our countries as well all seated here, if you were to say, what is CWP, will they immediately say what it is? They'll say, what? CWP, what's that? So I think the issue about improving our own propaganda, raising women who have succeeded, but also building our alumni so that we can draw on those women who have been there before us to support women's struggles going forward. And I would say lastly, solidarity with the women's movement going forward. Thank you, Helen.
Councillor Bev.
Thank you. Run for office. There's ask number 2. You only need 3 more. For current politicians, I'm going to say to you, champion other women to run. Get alongside them, encourage them, get them to come along. For those who are considering, you know, how can you be engaged? You could support someone. You can ask someone to run. I think women have a trouble raising money at times. But women, we don't support other women. We can support them through our finances. We can come alongside them in many, many ways. Women are our worst enemies. Instead of just getting to your position and staying there become a bridge to help other people come along and come beside you. Really, I had to say 3 things. I'd say ask her, support her, and be her. Thank you.
Honourable Maria?
Yes, in closing, I'll just say that it is important that we have strong support groups for our women, that we teach our girls from a very early stage about their potentials and help them to expand on these as they get older, that we consider campaigns to our younger ones, our younger girls via technology and get them more involved across the world, have a full women movement towards leadership in every sector. Additionally, help funding women. That's an area that needs to be looked at as well. Help funding women in campaigns for elections and encouraging men to be involved in the campaign to have women present at the leadership role. In addition to that, I would say that we all need to band together as women and have mentorship programs as well to really get the word out there and encourage more women to become active in politics.
Thank you. Sarah, you really are getting the last word. Please.
Thank you and good afternoon. I've realised being very little, you have to try and command the room any way you can, and I find that standing up and wearing high heels just for the presentation bit of conferences is a good idea. So I'm a professor of politics and gender. There wasn't one in the UK until I took that title, and a number of people advised me not to do it. It would make me look narrow and biased, but I decided that I should claim that name. And part of claiming being a professor of politics and gender is that I study politics and gender, obviously. But I do so because I also want to transform the world of politics to make it inclusive of women. I want to make it inclusive for equality, just because it's unfair. I want to do it for women, to get women here, and also for gender equality in society. So my little pledge is to use my academic work to support women politicians and our male champions. I'm hoping there's more than just you. I know there are actually, to transform politics so that women's needs and interests are met. So one thing I think today, for those of you who are active in politics, is in your countries, look out for your women and politics professors and lecturers and researchers and use them to help you, because part of one of the clear messages is about solidarity, it's about mentoring, it's about partnerships and friendships. And I think too often we're too far apart, and I think we can work together and collectively. The second point I'd want to make is that I think we have to face up to the fact that all of us can name enough women to fill our parliaments, our councils, with half women. So let's commit to making sure when anyone says, oh, there aren't enough women, that we are ready to say there absolutely are. And I'll come back to that later when I talk about merit. But it seems to me we need to think about these various combinations of factors that get in the way of women participating in politics. So people have been absolutely right to stress the fact that women need the right to participate, but they also need the ability to participate, and that's about resources, which may vary somewhat in different countries, but absolutely is about education and enabling us to rethink who the good politician is. We laugh when our male champion talks about men drinking the money in politics, but let's really unpack this idea of the good politician, the one who's always there to make those evening meetings, like you said, to keep other women out, or to deliver hundreds and hundreds of leaflets because somebody else is taking care of their children, right? We need to transform the qualities, the qualifications by which women get judged. Somebody on the panel said women are looked at with different glasses. So we need to take those glasses off those who get to define who's good in politics, who has the merit. And we can do that by challenging the poor behaviour and calling it out. And again, that's something everyone can do every day. We need to make politics something that normal women do every day. And if we don't do that, it will remain an elite and minority profession. Just like a girl, somebody said, or just like a woman. We need to make sure that the ideas of leadership are such that there are multiple ways of performing good leadership and not just a single definition that women find themselves judged against and failing against because we're not able to do it the way it's historically been done. I love the idea, and I love the fact that non-academics use the word gatekeepers, because we use that word. And, you know, we've got to open those gates, and we've got to get rid of, again, as was raised, of the guys and some women who keep those gates locked. And maybe part of that is making us the people with the key, and actually really... We can't all be elected politicians. We might not all want to be, but we can be other actors in transforming what's going on. So actually becoming party members or party activists or supporting from the outside, another really important point, it seems to me, that was made and I would want to reinforce, is this is not just the work of women who are active in electoral politics. It's about women's movements, and it's about other groups who may be much less organised, your own friendship groups. What we need to do is ensure that there is, across many different spaces, support for women who wish to participate. But let's get into those gatekeeping roles, grab them and open the gates. Violence against women. We have to address this. We have a moment in the global situation, it seems to me, where we're suddenly taking violence against women in politics much more seriously. And we have to, and we should, and therefore we can address that. Plant the seed and water it. Yes, recruit women. It's an active verb. Stop blaming us for not being present, for not putting ourselves forward. What's wrong with politics if we're not there? Let's embarrass those who do politics when there aren't enough women present and say, what are you doing wrong? Why is your party so unattractive to women, right? Let's put the question back on those who currently overpopulate our positions of power. We've had many talks today by women that I like to think of as critical actors. We need to support those critical actors. Of course, we want 50-50 in our politics, but we can do a lot before we get to 50-50 by ensuring that our critical actors are enabled to put into place a whole range of support mechanisms. We need to think about formal rules and informal norms. We need to make our political institutions gender sensitive, diversity sensitive, and inclusive. There are whole global, the IPU's framework for gender-sensitive parliaments. I would thoroughly recommend it if you're not aware of it, to look at how we actually transform our institutions. We need to ripen these institutions for change. We need to deploy our male allies, because sometimes, quite often, all of the time, they may have access to the positions of power that can change the formal rules. Sometimes it is too costly for women to seek to change the rules. We need men who can afford to take the hit to put forward those kind of reforms. Let's create those new institutions, networks, mentoring programs, caucuses, women's legislative committees. Let's look. There are plenty of lessons we can learn from around the world. Amber Rudd this morning said in the centenary of the UK's first women getting the vote, we should drive more change. Let's have some specifics. Let's learn from business, one of the sessions this morning. They talked about transparency, data, identifying individuals and actors who are responsible, and then holding them to account, both from within political institutions, from within political parties, but also, again, the women's movement and the women's media. And one thing was said this morning about we don't get to control who reports our parliamentary politics, but we can ask which questions, I'm right at the last moment, about who gets to report, who does get access to all of our political institutions to report, and let's make them 50-50 too. Anyone can do it. Let's stop having meeting at ungodly hours, and let's make politics fit with women's lives. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. And my concluding comments are very brief. Your yellow cards, I hope you have ideas to put on them and pin them somewhere in the Westminster room on this floor, 4th floor, because we want this to feed into the CHOGM and discussion and ongoing work at CLGF and CPA. Secondly, I want to thank the sponsors, CLGF and CPA, for bringing together this fantastic group of panellists representing people with municipal and national government experience. And thirdly, let's all give our panellists and our keynote speaker a very big hand. Thank you.